Welcome to the Contact Center Gurus, the podcast for contact center and customer experience leaders. Learn best practices, new technologies, tips and tricks, and more. Today's episode is sponsored by Support Logic. Support Logic is the world's first support experience platform for customer support leaders, helping you move from providing reactive to proactive support. Reduce customer escalations by 40%. Reduce customer churn by 25%. Improve proactive outreach by 60% and more. Extract the voice of the customer in real time without surveys. Elevate your customer support and transform your customer experience with groundbreaking applications for next-generation customer service and support. Change the game with applications that leverage innovative AI and NLP technology, intelligent workflows, and intuitive UI for the SX platform. Sign up now for a free sandbox environment at www.supportlogic.io. This podcast is sponsored by Balto. Do your reps forget the right things to say on calls? Do they frequently put customers on hold because they don't know the answer? Or maybe they forget to ask discovery questions that help qualify customers. With Balto, you can guide each rep through their conversations at the push of a button. Balto rides along your reps' screens, listens to both sides of the conversation, and shows them the best things to say live on the call. After just 14 weeks of using Balto, National General Insurance saw 16% higher conversions and 53-second lower handle times. Head over to balto.ai/guru to get a free pair of Bose headphones for a demo. That's BALTO.ai/GURU. This podcast is also sponsored by OzoneTel. Is a contact center part of your customer service strategy? OzoneTel's AI-assisted platform will help you deliver the best experience possible. It's an affordable contact center solution with advanced features, deep native integrations, and outstanding service. There are no contracts or annual commitments, and you can get a basic contact center deployed within hours. Experience it yourself with a free trial at www.ozonetel.com. This podcast is sponsored by Cloud Tech Gurus. Cloud Tech Gurus are the hottest technology matchmakers for contact center leaders in the country. Sourcing technologies and solution providers is grueling, time-consuming, and complicated. They make the process simpler and more efficient. The Gurus map out your requirements, source solutions providers, help you choose the one that is the right fit, and help manage the implementation, all at no cost. They work with nearly every major vendor, more than 150 solutions providers, and are vendor agnostic. They help save you time, money, and headaches. Visit www.cloudtechgurus.com to learn more. Now, let's listen in.
Okay, welcome back to another episode of the Contact Center Gurus podcast. I'm your co-host, Jessica Voss.
And I'm your other co-host, Darren Prime. And with us today is Lance Freed, the Chief Marketing Officer and Business Enablement Officer at Thrio. Lance, thank you for joining us.
Hey, thank you, Darren, and thank you, Jessica. Looking forward to sharing my experiences of the cloud.
Yeah,
Awesome.
if you can just give us a background about yourself so the listeners can listen in and know about what you do and who you are.
Yeah, sure. So I have been a cloud evangelist and pioneer over the last 20 plus years in the call and contact center space. So before the term cloud even existed, I was at a carrier level putting solutions in the network to repackage and offer as such. So very passionate about advocating the cloud. Certainly it has improved. We're going to talk about where it was, where it is, and where it's heading over the course of the next 30 minutes from a technology perspective. And I've run in various capacities, either as a CEO or comparable, several CCaaS vendor organizations in the space, and thrilled with our current one, Thrio, that really is taking a very modern approach to overcome some of the obstacles that have been experienced by enterprises.
And I guess I would take things on a wild tangent if I mentioned that you'd also kind of developed, invented a waterproof player many years ago that you sold to Qualcomm. But it's cool.
Yeah, serial entrepreneur is what a lot of people call me. So I wouldn't be shocked if I take another entrepreneurial path before it's all said and done beyond the Thrio days.
We'll be looking forward to it.
Yeah. So during this week for Christmas, we thought we'd talk about, ready or not, here comes the cloud. Now, cloud has been around for a very, very long time, Lance. So it boggles me to know that some companies haven't adopted the cloud. So why do you think some companies have yet to adopt the cloud?
The migration path has truly had what I'll call a checkered past. There's a lot of options and approaches that enterprises struggle with, from a hybrid to an all-in. There's really no one correct path from my vantage point. And, fees and costs can get pretty overwhelming. So I think this isn't a situation where you just flick a switch and voila, you're a CCaaS player, you got a cloud contact center solution. You got to really understand the proper steps to take advantage of migrating to the cloud, because it is complex. Everybody's different, and we're going to talk about best practices, things that you can do to avoid the pitfalls, and the myths of what folks think the continuity will look like, apples to apples, etc.
Very cool. I remember, gosh, when I started selling CCaaS, and I thought, well, back then it was called hosted call center. It was before cloud. And then Microsoft started doing the cloud commercials, and sorry for the fire engine noises in the background, but sounds like an emergency out there. Anyhow, I remember thinking, gosh, when adoption starts in a few years, I'll just be an order taker, overwhelmed from calls from people that want to move off of premise-based systems to the cloud. It certainly didn't happen in the timeline that I thought it would, but it seems to be happening far more rapidly now. So why now? Why now are so many companies moving to the cloud? And why now is the timing so much better, just kind of from an overall industry perspective, for folks to move to the cloud?
Yeah, I think it's truly the inevitable path that we've been for 20 years talking about, really getting expandability of more capabilities and more dispersed agent pools, geographically, domestic and or international. And again, there's been the promise of reduced cost. And all of those factors really come together. Now, I can tell you firsthand that some enterprises tried early adoption, didn't have success. Now they're coming around to the cloud for round 2. So they're smarter. The platforms are more agile and the solutions more targeted to actually fulfill the promise of the cloud. But really, today the cloud, it's got to fulfill one platform across all different centers and reporting and efficiencies. And that's the promise of the cloud, and we're finally seeing it fulfilled. Other ways to look at this, other departments have already migrated to the cloud. You've got disparate solutions of customer data and CRM packages that are being leveraged by more than just customer care that are in the cloud, and that really accelerated the cloud. And there's consumption models now. So as enterprises are looking at the cloud, they're saying, I'm getting away from licensing and getting away from maintenance fees to make it more, pay for what you use. And that promise of flexibility is what ultimately the cloud must deliver on.
And I imagine, what thoughts on how much COVID has affected people moving to the cloud? Kind of ties into my why now.
Yeah, I can tell you it's been significant. I mean, that's been the game changer. The two game changers in the last 20 years have been the CIOs and CTOs saying we can move our customer data to the cloud with the likes of Salesforce, going back 15 years. that opened up the opportunity for the cloud. And then, for better or worse, COVID changed the work from anywhere mindset, and many traditional centers had to scramble for solutions, which enabled a significant amount of seats. I got involved with our technology, turning up COVID screening and testing triages, and literally hundreds of agents in multi-site, multi-country within 24 to 48 hours. That's the power of the cloud. But it really, when it hits home and you see it work towards solving a pandemic, or a financial institution that suddenly has all their brokers having to work from home that they've never done before, and how do we do that with proper security and compliance and required recordings versus non-recorded. Sophisticated solutions like what we brought to market can handle that.
Yeah, I have this conversation. I've been having cloud conversations for like 10 years. And I've seen it evolve so much. And one of the things nowadays that I'm seeing is around size, like the size of a contact center, 10,000 agents versus, 50 agents. And back in the day when cloud first came up, there was always a limit. There was either a limit of 500 seats in a single domain to 800 seats in a single domain the next few years. Now, is there really a size differential, or is it all based on that cloud solution?
Well, I'm going to come at that two ways. I think the first is, the cloud technology and infrastructure for architecture has changed dramatically over the last 2 to 3 years. We took full advantage of that, leveraging capabilities such as Kubernetes, which is what Google uses to manage its 30,000 VMware servers, and Ignite for load balancing. So these are all the under the hood things that make a big difference. Cloud is not cloud for a cloud contact center. So more legacy and established cloud contact center platforms that were built 20 years ago are trying to move from a data managed center environment into a public cloud, but they still have certain challenges as they weren't built to take advantage of these capabilities. That then gets into how many agents you can put up and have available within a certain domain. Some modern vendors have surpassed that. So that's gone away, and that's certainly one of the areas at the end we'll talk about. What are some questions you should ask a potential CCaaS vendor you're talking to? I think your other point, Jessica, was really good, which is size, okay? I mean, cloud solutions, cloud contact center solutions are amazing for 150 seats. That's the sweet spot. 250 or less, typically there aren't other solutions in play, that some of them are homegrown. It gets more complex the larger you get. And then there's a lot of issues trying to get apples to apples, reporting, how you define statistics within a particular report, how it varies, and the time element. I mean, if you're in one of those larger centers, like Darren called out 1,000 seats, and you've got various systems you're hitting, that could be a 2-quarter, to 18-month initiative. So you really have to understand what it is you're getting into. Now, I can say as a fact, over the last 20 years, I've witnessed, the vendor has taken the approach of let's get in and then we'll design it and figure it out. That's not the approach I like to take because it sets the wrong expectations. I like to do a lot of upfront work, and that's my perspective, to understand the entire environment, the call flows, all the systems that are going to be hit, and memorialize it so that everyone understands what it is that we're looking to accomplish together, what the timeline is, and then I'll then get into how do you build the right team and other stuff we'll talk about later.
Yeah, and one more thing that comes up on size that I hear a lot is around TCO and ROI. So a lot of these guys that are, especially, the 5,000 to 10,000 seat contact centers, they look at the cost versus, what they're spending on-prem. So every single one of them is evaluating real hard the soft dollar and hard dollar cost savings. Have you experienced this at all, these conversations around TCO and ROI? on the
Every
cloud
day.
versus on-prem?
Every
What do you
day.
see?
Every day. And you know, everyone has a different philosophy here. I'm the customer advocate. In this case, my customer is an enterprise. So I always prefer, you know, I take the crawl, walk, run mentality. Okay, so what I mean by that here in this context is, look, don't go all in, start with a pilot. Define your success criteria. That's going to allow you to better estimate and understand your cost efficiencies and the capabilities. That is what I recommend. Some folks end up, and I've talked with some folks in the last month that are very large, Fortune 500s, and they've got budget and they're trying to figure out what to do now. Definitely requires exec buy-in when you're saying, okay, here's what we want to achieve above and beyond the pilot. Because you got to build that right migration team. You've got to have right representation from everyone that's part of this so that you all end up at the end of the day where you need to be, not just siloed groups of that. Because there's going to be problems and there's going to be schedule adjustments. You got to be able to agree from a macro perspective, what needs to adjust. You've got to agree on if this is apples to apples or if there's opportunities to add in some new capabilities along the way, but you've got to consider retraining your agents and your supervisors and admins on a new solution, and then adding in new capabilities just makes that even one more layer of complex. So I always recommend going apples to apples as a phase one once you get through a pilot and recognize you're going forward, and then layering in because it'll be easier on the workforce and you'll avoid churn.
So in cloud-based systems, obviously, there's been a lot of change over the last, I don't know how long Five9's been in business or some of those guys, but 10 plus years, their version of the cloud and how they handle business continuity and redundancy is very different, I think, how it's done today. Somewhere in just multiple physical data centers. And, now there's Dockers, containers, microservices, federated clouds. How do you maintain business continuity at Thrio? And what do you think the business continuity and redundancy will be?
I think business continuity is mission critical for anyone that's looking at some level of transformation from enterprise to the cloud or from one cloud vendor to another. I think that gets back to my philosophy of really wanting to do the upfront work to understand from a continuity perspective how you operate today, what systems you're touching, what the flow is for each type of interaction. I mean, let's face it, there's some companies that have agents that are hitting 23 different widget screens because of the complexity of their solution and where the data is coming from, and looking at how to do that better, how some of those point solutions can be eliminated. I mean, if you look at, kind of what's new, we used to have 10 years ago, it was all point solutions, so you had a point solution for chat, you had a point solution for email, and now you've got, that went to multi-channel and then now omni-channel. But the ability to eliminate some of those vendors that, and believe it or not, enterprises obviously are still using them because they've made the investment in the licenses, but now they're looking at, am I getting the ROI with my interaction handle time being higher than I want? And what if I can shave time off due to efficiencies with a better solution and eliminate some of those maintenance fees? So it is really understanding the whole environment from a continuity perspective to then show the value add of a solution that can, take them from where they are to where they're going. And that kind of also lends itself to the openness approach, as I'll call it. So that gets into the architecture of, really being able to be what I'll call open. Open doesn't mean open. I mean, in the cloud, open has a different definition. So just to put that in context, for continuity and having data in maybe homegrown systems that are at the prem, different open platforms could address that differently. So Twilio is an open platform. They obviously have code and APIs where someone could develop to that to do almost anything. But that's not really the world we live within for most enterprises looking for a cloud solution. The CCaaS vendors like Thrio, us, and others, they have what we call open solutions that are REST API driven, but it really gets into what you can hit with legacy systems. Can you easily have workforce management, CRM, and drag and drop ability, or go with the stuff developed in-house with the Twilio-esque approach, or the Amazon version of such. So I think understanding that the data you have and how it's going to need to be used real time in routing, decisioning, and assisting the agent is critical to business continuity. So that's why I'm saying for the more complex, it's anywhere from 2 quarters to 18 months to do this right. So it's got to be properly planned, budgeted, with the right leadership team and supporting cast all in place, or too many things can go wrong.
Oh yeah. Now, when you talk about too many things could go wrong, so my next question is around, what would you consider cloud migration best practices? And it's a twofold question on people migrating from on-prem to cloud, and then maybe another group that are migrating from another cloud provider to a new cloud provider.
Yeah, I think so let's start with the easier one, which is cloud to cloud. Okay, I'm going from one vendor to another. That's the beauty of the cloud. You now know why you're migrating. So what is it? Where are you falling short? So I always like to understand what's working and what isn't working, to make sure that while one platform might be able to fix what's not working, you don't want to leave a gap with what was working. So really understand it. And then, I'm a big fan of proof of concept pilots with defined criteria that then would migrate to commercial with success met by the solution. And so for a cloud to cloud, that's pretty straightforward. There are also, more modern resources to understand who the unlikely or unknown, at a macro level vendors are, such as what your group does. You uncover the hidden gems rather than the known brands to present based on the needs of these customers. So I think that plays really well into the cloud to cloud. Okay, so now we're going to go enterprise to cloud. Okay, that's that is a daunting task. So what that really entails is completely understanding your current environment, what you're looking to do in terms of the transition. Again, pick the low-hanging fruit. Start with a pilot and understand the entire flow for every type of interaction that comes in, every system it hits. Mapping that out and understanding which of your vendors that you have that are ancillary ones that you are absolutely dead set on keeping, then they get plugged into this open architecture and how they can be leveraged with a REST API call to populate. I mean, in my world, we have our own user interfaces. We also have clients that have their homegrown user interfaces that are hitting these disparate systems behind the scenes at the prem. They leverage our APIs into their existing interface. Their agents don't have to go through any training. And that's really a flexibility that we can bring to the table today, that for larger deployments that have more legacy homegrown and embedded technologies, they love that because they need us for routing, decisioning, omni-channel, full visibility from the monitoring, reporting, recording, listening, screen view, etc. But they've already got other things built in of how their particular vertical and enterprise play that just don't fit within a CCaaS platform. So our ability to go either way, that's something you should really look for when, based on the size of your enterprise and what you're looking to accomplish. Do you have that flexibility? We're hosted in the Google public cloud, multiple instances. We even allow our customers to have their own Google database BigQuery account. So they can own all their data, the customer data, the reporting data, the analytics data. So they don't have to go through a process of having that offloaded to them through SFTP, et cetera. So, that's what the modern cloud vendor should bring to the table, is to give the customer all the options. So when they say, this is what I want to accomplish, you can sit down and you can do a strategy day and come up with multiple ways to address everything and eventually get to the right solution instead of have one size fits all type mentality and approach. So that is, in a nutshell, how I would approach a larger, prem enterprise migration to the cloud.
Very cool. So obviously there's been big changes since cloud contact center as a service came along. And let's talk about some of, what's new in the CCaaS world. For instance, Thrio vendor, comparing it to some of the ones that originally kind of started the CCaaS trend or craze 12, 15 years ago. What's new in the CCaaS world? And also, if you could kind of touch on the direction you think CCaaS companies are going to have to move in, like for instance, federated clouds, because that'd be pretty interesting to learn.
Yeah, federated cloud, absolutely. We're sort of doing that already today.
Can you first define federated cloud for those who don't know what that means?
Sure. So federated cloud would be having, your cloud contact center vendor software deployed in, the Google public cloud, the Amazon public cloud, and Azure, and having the ability to leverage all as an enterprise. So you can have your data and traffic moving through those different clouds. Now, the really key thing here is, as you start thinking globally, is there's certain restrictions and confinements in certain international areas where if you're in one of those clouds, you very well are not able to meet the requirements that are necessary. Whereas if you can leverage more than one cloud or other public clouds, which is what we've done for one or two of our customers, then with that federated mindset, you can overcome obstacles that are very prevalent today. And that's really where the federated cloud is going to get more traction with larger branded enterprises that have an international presence and need such. So that was part of it. So now I'll back up. So from a capability perspective, clearly everyone talks about artificial intelligence. They talk about self-service conversational bots. The best way to approach those is embedding them into your core architecture and platform, so that as an enterprise is looking to leverage those, they're sort of future-proof. They're not having to do an integration and cobble on top and do REST API calls. They're actually embedded within. That's part of why we've leveraged Google, because we put inside of our platform a lot of their best-of-breed capabilities for their CCAI, for their dialogue flow, which is, for those who don't know the term, their text and voice-based conversational bots, as well as translation services and transcriptions, all readily available instead of third-partied and then having to do testing and integrate. And as they continue to bring out more and more modules, we can just plug them in for customers and turn them on. So that gets to speed to deploy, no upfront cost because these things exist, so to speak. And those are the game changers today. So where are we heading? What's going to be the next big move? I truly believe, as I did over a decade ago when I focused in on mobile customer care with an in-app care platform that we brought to market. I brought many platforms to market in the cloud. I was a decade ahead of my time on that one. We'll leave that for a different conversation. Here, I think you're going to see a mobile-first approach for CCaaS. You're going to see SDKs built, no different than what I did 10 years ago, that are going to drop into an enterprise's smartphone app, that are going to be leveraged for communication, displays, communications for both self and live service. That's where I think the overlap and the intersection between that, that very informed mobile consumer and the CCaaS platforms plays. And some folks are preparing for that already in the space.
Yeah. And, I was talking to a client the other day, and they were talking about a story that they'd like to see where a call or a chat or whatever interaction type comes in. And AI does a really great job in evaluating which ones need to go to a live agent or not. And obviously, so it handles the ones that agent where it can handle them well, because wherever AI can handle an interaction well, it does it better, faster, and cheaper, and usually with a higher CX score. But so then it routes the ones that need to an agent, and then the agent, and throughout the interaction with the agent, the AI is listening in tone, sentiment, words. It's coming up with suggestions. It's pulling up products from maybe a product list. Maybe it's pulling up links to articles in the knowledge base that'll help the agent better serve that interaction and faster, and more to the clients, to their satisfaction. And then at the end of the interaction, the AI basically notes from the entire interaction automatically puts them in to the system. So the agent literally is able to just look at the notes, hey, come on, move on to the next call, no typing manually the notes in. And that was kind of the story he was on, the future that he'd like to see. Is that happening now? Is that something that working towards, or maybe you can do now, or is that something you're working towards and that others will probably be working towards as well?
Yeah, absolutely. A good part of what you just described is happening now. Today on our platform, you could front end that interaction with AI to determine the actionability and where to take that, regardless of their entry point. You can qualify it, capture information, self-service it straight through for the modern consumer that's not really wanting to have a live phone call type interaction or chat or SMS. But when you hit that decision tree and the logic for what to do with it, and realize it needs live assistance, we can screen pop all that information, which can then lead to very detailed agent script that's dynamic and changes based on how that conversation goes for consistency, compliance, and allow to log the information. So at the end of the call, there is not that post-call need a few minutes to type in all the notes. Can AI automate some of that? Yeah, that's something that's being worked on. That is a cool future feature that will, again, save time, have efficiencies. But another thing that we're doing today is we can actually have AI, monitoring. So say it's a chat session. So a perfect example, we have a client that is in a health instance, we'll call it, suicide-esque hotline, for lack of defining who they are or where they are, but put it in that category. And they're doing digital help. So they've actually got AI running real time to classify if certain words or phrases are captured, no different than we could do in a voice call, that interaction would then be accelerated and moved from that frontline individual to someone of that next stature for someone that is in a more serious critical path. But that's all done in real time. And that's AI being involved in the decisioning and listening process, like what you described, Darren.
Well, I have one for you that I've been researching for the past 2 years, and it's around AR and VR. So what I'm seeing and reading in the next, 5 to 8 years, customers want, not including mobile experience, but a more realistic mobile experience. And I see it, I'm actually seeing that now in a lot of field services around AR, but I'm seeing it now slowly creeping into, let's say, retail or other spaces where it's direct to consumer, B2C, and even B2B. Have you heard anything around that realm?
I have heard, at the retail, folks trying to leverage technology for just that. Don't have enough firsthand experience to really invest time of our listeners, so I'm gonna punt.
No punting allowed. All right, so we'll follow up in 5 years and we'll have that conversation then. So
Sounds
back
good.
to our original conversation. So for our listeners, what are some key CCaaS questions or things that they need to be looking at or asking potential vendors?
Yeah, I think they really, and I had said it earlier, they really need to get a better understanding of the platform openness and structure, because they need to understand how that, and they're going to need to bring in technical resources to get the right answers. Again, because they're going to say it's an open platform, we've got REST APIs, but you got to be able to plan and ensure that all the connections are going to be there for you, both data being passed in and out, so that it can properly hit your needs, but not only that, but can handle the size and complexity and scale with that data. It's one thing to say that we have a published API that can get the data, but can it scale across your different locations? Are there latency issues? That is the openness. Now, from a platform perspective, what's your uptime? How are you set up? Where are you deployed? Do you have the resiliency, and do you have, the geographical redundancy and locations? Another thing to ask about is not only uptime, but maintenance time. We have no weekly or monthly scheduled maintenance like every other vendor in this space. That's almost unheard of. Well, it is unheard of. So we're kind of setting a new bar and a new mark, and that's based on the modern architecture. We can do updates where we have zero service impact for any customers. And that's part of taking full advantage of the modern cloud and being cloud native. So these are some of the questions you should ask the vendor. There's some incredibly well marketed solutions in the CCaaS space. My hat's off to them. I've been with some of them in various capacities, but that doesn't mean they're the best architected and reliable platform. And at the end of the day, downtime is extremely costly. Maintenance time on a monthly and weekly basis costs you money. Database glitches and synchronizations that don't work properly cost you money. You really should look at those areas, because we all understand the pain points of database synchronization, which affects reporting on a micro and macro level. Those are areas I dig into. Those are the areas that we look to address when we launch our latest platform, to really solve those problems, so that we can scale for, from the very large enterprises, and also accommodate with the same technology for the SMB market, which we do today.
Yeah, I'm a big architecture kind of girl. If I wasn't doing this, I'd probably be an engineer. But I always tell people in general, how many active data centers do they have on your instance? I think it's the number one question, besides features and functions, blah, blah, blah. Everyone's kind of getting to the same features and functions. But now a lot of cloud players, some new ones, are kind of bypassing proper architecture. They're putting customers up on one active data center without anything on standby or secondary data center or instance. So if that one goes down, okay, you're going down. So that's like my number one question. For those of you listening, put that down as your number one question, because if they don't meet that one, you need to move on rather than going through, features and functions. But Darren, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, well, a couple other things. So some of the providers out there, they all say they're cloud-based omni-channel systems, right? But in some cases, all of the different channels and different features that they talk about, those are through companies they acquired or third parties that they partner with, versus solutions that they built in-house to have a unified solution where everything plays well together and works as one single system versus multiple disparate systems. So how does a client kind of uncover when they're vetting out potential providers, which ones are not Frankenstein monsters with a bunch of disparate systems glued together, or a single, or more or less a single unified solution?
I think Jessica really kind of nailed it. We're, when I say we're deployed in the Google public cloud, we're in multiple clusters and instances, which means I've got the same interaction running in more than one location.
Right.
And I've got leveraging the 30,000 VMware servers that, is available within Google. I have no spike concerns. We can move traffic. A great example of our architecture, remember about, say, 2 years ago when, and if you're a social media buff, you go, yep, remember it, when Facebook and Instagram were down because, one of the Google public cloud locations was down and they were down for 12 hours. Well,
yeah, I remember.
Well, we had no impact. Our traffic moved to the other center simultaneous to that occurring, which was unheard of. Zero impact outside of the interactions that were in process that you cannot do anything about. Obviously, those were impacted, but everything else was maintained. Okay, that's a powerful story, and that's bringing to life the cloud. A cloud vendor is not necessarily a cloud vendor. They're not all alike, and the ability to have that done and have that done in an automated fashion is why we're, of the carrier grade nature. So I would really investigate looking at a vendor if I was an enterprise. Great feature functionality, branding, logos, analyst reviews of your feature functionality, but get under the hood. If you don't have a technical resource, the analysts certainly do, or other resources are available to really kind of dig into that. I'd ask them, what's your uptime? How many outages have you had? What, have you had latency because you had too much spike volume and you're only in one location, to Jessica's point. So those are a lot of really kind of more granular questions to ask. And if you're not getting real answers, there's probably a reason for that.
I'm going to ask my last question a different way. So what are the benefits to a solution that is more or less a complete unified omni-channel platform versus one where they've got voice and maybe they have voice and chat, they're using some other third party or partner or company they acquired for SMS, for social, for other channels? So I mean, there's plenty of systems that have been out there originally only had voice because that's all they needed. Now they've found ways to add on other channels. I don't really consider them omni-channel. I consider it a multi-channel Frankenstein monster. But what are some of the benefits to the newer providers that actually have a true omni-channel unified solution?
I think the best way to describe it is built for purpose. I mean, you want a unified view regardless of if it's voice, email, chat, social, etc. You want to be able to have a view and reporting capabilities that are consistent and not from different systems with different calculations that have been somehow integrated that don't give you the holistic picture. Because if you have multiple sites or deployed in different time zones, different countries, the solution built from the ground up is the one that's going to give you everything you're looking for from that component. So you're going to be able to monitor, report, and have no synchronization related matters. So that's one piece to the puzzle. The other piece is to be able to transition from one channel to another. On our platform, you could go from a digital channel to a live call, to an SMS, to a conversational bot, back to an agent. The agent has a 360-degree view of your entire journey, and you don't hit dead ends and have to ever start over. And the ability to screen pop pertinent data when it transitions to a live agent screen from other channels and or from self-service. So that is the inherent value of why would you want something that was kind of pieced together versus something that was built with purpose to give you that flexibility and all-in-one look and feel without any integration work.
Right. Let me ask you this. This comes, I think about this often. So back when I started in the industry, CRMs did, and ticketing systems did CRM and ticketing system stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And call center platforms did call center platform stuff. And then it seems to me the ticketing systems and CRM companies said, we could make a lot more money if we started doing the call center stuff. If we could do, originally it was just, maybe email and then chat and then voice. And now they're kind of trying to compete. I kind of see CCaaS platforms staying in their lane, but I've seen the CRM companies going way out of their lane. They want to make all the money and they want to start providing call center solutions. I've never seen one that did it as well as an enterprise contact center. But what are your thoughts on the CRMs, CSMs, help desk, service desk systems that are trying to get into the CCaaS space, and now when customers are looking to make a decision where they're going to go next, they're also looking at some of these CRM systems. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I see it every day. Great marketing.
Great marketing.
Obviously, you go where the money is from a software developer perspective. So we're talking about a $24+ billion a year market for these software capabilities right now, according to the likes of, Gartner and Forrester. Their data points are accurate. You've got an adoption rate still under 20% of enterprise to cloud. So if you already have the relationship as a ticketing group or a CRM group, it makes sense to try and expand your footprint into the space, either via acquisition or trying to build or leverage, tools that are out there that you could build off of. But telephony is hard. I mean, that's all there is to it. It is extremely hard, and folks spend their entire careers in developing these telephony platforms for customer care. Laser focus on that is really what is important to a buyer. Someone learning how to do it and trying to then sprinkle stuff in, but they all don't function quite the way they should, is built for purpose, gets concerning. But if I've got all my CRM data with a vendor and they've now got other solutions they can offer, I'm obviously going to look at it. But I'm not going to know what I don't know until I take a good look at what my other options are that are still integrated with that CRM vendor, or with that ticketing system vendor, or with that workforce management vendor. From my vantage point, there are best of breed CRM, workforce management, and ticketing systems. Why would a leader of a cloud contact center solution want to try and replicate them, leverage them, give your customer the ability to have best of breed for every piece to the puzzle? So that's how I see it. But yeah, there's a lot of overlap going on. There's some good stories, and there's some not so good stories out there in the market.
Yeah, I'd say I've had so many clients over 12, 13 years that were using some type of CRM ticketing. They thought, they were sucked into that they could also do equally good routing, reporting, QA, all the things that you have in an enterprise contact center platform. And ultimately, after spending 6 months or a year on it, all right, we're going to keep using them for ticketing, but we need a real enterprise contact center platform. And so many of them were my customers over the last 12, 13 years. So I'm not convinced that they do it as well. I believe in the core competency philosophy. There's something everybody does really well, and they do ticketing really well and CRM really well, not necessarily enterprise contact center.
No, I agree. I've seen a lot of the big four consulting groups really focusing on trying to migrate customers into a reverse usage of some of the vendors categories you just referenced. And I think it has to do with their understanding of their core competency, and not really there being, ticketing or CRM, but not really understanding the core competency of an omni-channel CCaaS platform and everything that does that, isn't necessarily accomplishable in the other platforms. Some get some of it, some get more of it, but some, have gaps. So it's really upon us as, leadership in the CCaaS space to educate and explain what you need to look for and add so that you make the right informed decisions. I'm never going to try and steer someone away from where they want to go. I'm just going to point out areas of concern as I learn their business model and what they're trying to do, and where other solutions may come up short, and how I would approach it with our solution or a different solution that I'm aware of.
Excellent.
Well, all right. So we're coming up to the top of the hour. Any final words, Lance?
I look forward to watching this in 5 years and seeing where the market heads.
All right. I'm going to put it on my calendar.
Yeah, I think this time of year, everyone's thinking about what are going to be my new initiatives for this upcoming calendar year, 2022, and the following year, since people are usually looking into your window. I'd say look back. Where were you a year ago, and what were you focused on? What did you get done? How has the market shifted due to the pandemic? This work from anywhere, my new needs based on that. And then really look at where are your pain points that you may be able to do some very focused and structured pilots to prove the value, and then go to the next step. But consumer touch points will continue to evolve. We are in a transition in a digital first. Voice will never go away, but I think the digital and the mobile and the enterprise mobile app are going to be the three-legged bar stool. As we look back on this recording in 5 years, you'll say he was right, hopefully. So that's my parting words. Of course, if anyone wants, if anyone has, specifics they'd like to, have a discussion on, I'm readily available to kind of learn of your environment and help assist you in what struggles you may have. The Cloud Tech Gurus team always knows how to get me in touch with people.
All right.
Awesome.
Well, you can also find Lance on LinkedIn. Definitely someone you want to get to know, pick his brain. And we thank you so much for your time, Lance. I hope you have a nice rest of the day.
Thank you.
Happy holidays.
Same to everybody. Thank you again.
Bye.
Take care.
Thanks for listening to the Contact Center Gurus podcast. Make sure to visit our sponsor pages. Support Logic at www.supportlogic.io. Balto at www.balto.ai. OzoneTel at www.ozonetel.com. Cloud Tech Gurus at www.cloudtechgurus.com. Don't forget to subscribe, and we will see you next time.